Now contributing to South Africa's foreign direct investment landscape, PepsiCo snapped up South Africa's Pioneer Foods in a deal that got approved in 2020, making it one of PepsiCo's largest acquisitions outside the United States. The company has a significant market share stake in the snacking industry that makes 18 billion rand a year in turnover. I visited the state-of-the-art PepsiCo Snacks factory in Isando and spoke to Gareth Haarhoff, the general manager for snacks, and started off by asking him to characterize the company's journey so far since the acquisition.
PepsiCo is a global food and beverage company.
Yeah.
But it's really bigger in foods than beverages. And it sees Africa as a new expansion territory for its global business.
Yes.
So hence they were looking around for an acquisition. It had been on the cards for a number of years previously.
Yeah.
And in 2020, finally the deal was done.
Yeah.
So PepsiCo very much views South Africa as an expansion market and a foothold to expand even more aggressively on the African continent.
This is so interesting that you say that PepsiCo is more of a food company than a beverage company, because when you think of PepsiCo, you think of Pepsi and Mountain Dew, really just the beverage side. But today we were actually in the plant for the snacks, the chips and the juices. Where was Pepsi?
Indeed. One automatically goes to the cool drinks and the beverages side of things when you say PepsiCo, but actually Pepsi is the biggest snacks company in the world, with brands like Lay's and Doritos, etc. And here in South Africa with Simba chips. The name is a bit misleading as such, but it just shows the depth of the PepsiCo business that we have. So delighted to host at Isando, our facility today, which is the biggest manufacturing facility for snacks in South Africa.
We'll just highlight the positioning of PepsiCo in South Africa's snacking industry. I think you said earlier in your presentation that the snacking industry in South Africa makes about 18 billion rand annually on turnover.
Correct, that's the AC Nielsen number. And we're delighted that we currently are market leader in the savory snack space in South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, just talk to me about some of the noticeable trends that you have seen in the snacking industry in South Africa. And I think in South Africa we have a specific culture that doesn't really sometimes align with the global trends. Are there any noticeable trends, and I guess also maybe specifically through the different economic cycles?
Yeah, we're very fortunate that snacking is quite recession proof, if you will. Ultimately, it's a smaller scale purchase than someone, for example, going out and buying a car or a new wardrobe in tougher economic times. It's a more accessible product to have, even if times are a little bit tough. So we're very grateful that snacking has been quite resilient through tougher times in all countries and all different economic cycles. In terms of the question around trends, we during the COVID time that you mentioned, we did see a lot of resilience, and even now we're seeing a number of South African flavors in particular that are unique to ourselves. So we're very lucky that we get all the best of the Lay's and Doritos world that PepsiCo has. A lot of innovation in different markets, flavors, formats, etc. But we always check it locally. So for example, we've brought out Simba Shisanyama flavor, Simba Bravos flavor in the past. So we have a lot of local taste profiles which we can tap into beyond what we typically see, like a sweet chili or a Mexican chili type from another market.
Well, talking about trends, because I've noticed just in the food and beverage industry globally, people are now focusing on more healthy snacks and foods and beverages. How have you catered to that shift in taste?
Yes, there's two main ways. The first is our sodium content, so the salt content in our products. There's a WHO World Health Organization standard, and Pepsi set an even higher standard for that for us to achieve. And I'm very pleased that South Africa is already on that higher PepsiCo standard than WHO are currently endorsing. So we're making sure that the salt content of our products is appropriate for our consumers. And the second part is really bringing out more healthy choices. For example, our safari range of trail mixes and fruits and nuts, etc., gives you even more healthy choices and offerings in our range.
And talking about safari, how are your exports looking? Because you mentioned that you export that. How is that footprint?
Yeah. Look, it's a wonderful business to have as an offset because when the rand, goes out to 19.5, we're one of the few businesses that start smiling. So going well. The quality of the raisins that we grow in South Africa are well renowned and respected internationally. So we sell the majority in European markets.
Okay.
We have a fairly large percentage to the US.
I was actually going to ask about that. If there are any conversations, any concerns that you might have now with the tariffs in place?
So we are having those conversations. Fortunately, none of them are passed at this point in time.
Okay, yeah.
But importers are acutely aware of any changes there. So it will shift our sales structure clearly if that's the case, depending on which countries also have a similar level of tariff applied.
Okay, how resilient is your supply chain in terms of the products that you source, in terms of your imports, and also how much localization is ingrained in your supply chain?
We're very lucky with that because it's almost 100% of materials are locally sourced. So all the potatoes that we use for Simba and Lay's are 100% locally grown. The maize that we use for Doritos, Knick Knacks, Fritos, Ghost Pops, etc., is all 100% locally grown. The raisins likewise. So it's really just a couple of seasoning items that we import, but the rest is fully localized. So
there's a lot of opportunity for small businesses and farmers and the like?
Absolutely. So we've got quite an extensive agro program where we're supporting local farmers.
Yes.
We have a large BEE farming component of our potato supply into our factory, and we're starting on the maize side now as well. So wonderful opportunities for local businesses.
I also noticed, because there's also quite a big focus on technology and really optimizing the manufacturing process. And I noted it in your note, you said that this plant in Isando is one of the most advanced production facilities. What makes it so special?
Sure. There's so many things that make Isando special. I'm not sure I could do it justice. But in terms of what you're referring to now, the new PC50 Flex machine, which we've put in here, the 750 million rand investment, which is a wonderfully significant investment into the growth of our business and in the South African economy, is state of the art. So fortunately, being part of a global company, we've really honed the production of potato chips to dare I say, a science. And it's a bit of art as well, I think. But we're using that latest technology from all around the world to make it as scientific as possible, to make it as efficient as possible, to produce the best quality all the time and as cheaply as we can, so that our consumers don't have to pay more for any waste or excess that we have in our plant, but we can keep the products as affordable as possible for the South African consumer.
That was General Manager of PepsiCo South Africa's snacks business, Gareth Haarhoff.